Hi, I'm Dr. Shane Criado, and today we're going to talk about what I do, what I've devoted my waking hours to, and that is sleep. More specifically, the role of sleep in sports psychiatry and boosting sports performance, because that is my super specialty, my niche, if you will, or niche. Now, I'm going to share my screen with you and walk you through a comprehensive overview of sleep in sport. All right. So, as I said, sleep is the last frontier of peak performance because in even elite athletes and teams, they focus on mental conditioning coaching, which is very important for resilience and flow state. They focus on physical training. They focus on nutrition, but sleep is never always addressed comprehensively. And when I mean comprehensively, I mean personalized, specific sleep strategies for individual athletes, but then also teams looking at in-season, preseason, off-season strategies, training timings, duration of training, using sleep as a performance boosting tool or testosterone boosting tool, sleep optimization, not just sleep normalization when there's a major problem that an athlete is experiencing. We don't do that for athletes for other issues, right? Do we only focus on nutrition if they are malnourished? No. Do we only focus on physical training or for an athlete when they feel weakness in the muscles? No. We want them to be their best, but it's not happening in sleep. So I'm a board certified psychiatrist and a sleep medicine doctor. And the reason why I even did this training program, a separate fellowship in sleep medicine, is because there was a huge need for quality and personalized sleep and interventions for our patients with mental health issues. I'm also a physical therapist and an MD, board certified in both psychiatry and sleep medicine. I've been a member of the International Society for Sports Psychiatry since 2013 and on their board since 2014. We've been moving the whole organization, the profession of sports psychiatry, toward integrative or lifestyle or holistic sports psychiatry, where a sports psychiatrist is known more than just a person who delivers a medication to somebody if they have issues in the mental health realm. We do way more than that. We do risk assessments for teams before they hire players. We do therapeutic use exemptions for certain medications that may not be allowed, that may be considered performance enhancing. We deal with substance abuse issues in athletes. We deal with concussions in athletes. And we're moving toward an integrative approach, which means what else is contributing to their brain health and mental health? The gut microbiome, inflammation, hormonal imbalance, and sleep, among a few. The first aspect is sleep in mental health and performance, which is why I set up the Sleep Performance Committee for the ISSB. And I'm also heading up their innovation and technology, which means how do we blend existing technology or wearables with sleep tracking, performance improvement, and mental health improvement. I'm the author of the book Peak Sleep Performance for Athletes that debuted #1 in sports medicine on Amazon. And I've also been a contributing author to 5 current published sports psychiatry books, and a 6th is on its way this year, actually. I created a video series for Dr. Daniel Amen called Overcoming Insomnia, which is a comprehensive, robust, lifetime ownership for a cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia course that's online. And also designed a sleep supplement for him called Put Me to Sleep, which has been received really, really well. So we are so happy about that. I do sleep workshops for individual teams, sleep guidelines for sports organizations like the Australian Football League, and I also consult with specific athletes or teams in season, off season, preseason to boost sports performance through sleep strategies, jet lag reduction, travel fatigue reduction, wakefulness and sleep strategies, strategic napping. There's proprietary calculations I've developed that have been shown to be extremely beneficial. And how beneficial? I'll show you a little later on. So the goals are to understand the role of sleep in sports performance, but also the bidirectional relationship between sleep problems and mental health problems, and to learn how to screen athletes for sleep problems. I don't expect every team doctor or therapist or nutritionist who's watching this video to be thinking they have to figure out how to be a sleep expert for athletes. That's not what this is about. Your goal is to educate the stakeholders, educate the athletes on the impact sleep problems have, or inadequate or suboptimal sleep, on their performance, their mental health, and their longevity and quality of life. So when I say poor sleep does this or that or the other, I mean either inadequate sleep or irregular timings of sleep or poor quality sleep. All those things matter. So we're going to discuss what sabotages people's sleep, especially the athletes, how prevalent the problem is, just sleep problems, not even counting personalized optimization strategies, the impact of sleep problems on performance, and a couple of strategies to help our athletes out, like strategic napping and sleep extension. What sabotages athletes' sleep? Well, we know that lifestyle factors play a role. There's always competing things pulling you in all these different directions. There's advertisers, there's teams, there's sponsors, there's social life, there's a ton of different things that affect your ability to prioritize sleep. The type of sleep and sport also matters, because there's a big difference in terms of recovery sleep and the timing of sleep and the quality of sleep when it comes to strength sports like powerlifting. Think about more inflammation, more muscle damage, more acid buildup in the muscles, longer recovery versus the aesthetic sports. What about the type of training? Endurance, which leads to more muscle breakdown, and sprints, for example. The timing of training is critical. If you're a swimmer, training is usually early in the morning, but if you're a night owl, you're not going to be close to your peak performance early morning. And what about competition times, which may vary from your training times and your circadian rhythm? Those will have a profound impact on your performance as well. I'll come to that later on. What about individual athletes' attitudes about sleep? We all hear about Michael Jordan having played 36 rounds of golf and finished off over 10 beers, and then goes to a Bulls game and scores over 50 points. Well, we don't know how much sleep he actually got the previous night. And we also don't know the other factors there at play. So it's very easy to latch on to superhuman stories. Not everyone is Michael Jordan, and not everyone knows exactly what he was doing in terms of other recovery tools like sleep extension before that game. Well, the current state of sleep in sports, even professional sport, is frankly very, very lousy, which is why I wrote the book and why I'm advocating for sleep optimization strategies in sport at every level. There's simply a lack of education. There's the team, the training teams, sports staff are not trained in this. The doctors are not trained in this. I had to do a ton of research after I got board certified in sleep medicine to even learn about these strategies. Who funds the studies? Why would people fund studies that are not very lucrative for them? Of course, they're going to fund a big pharma study instead. Therefore, there's a lack of awareness. The numbers aren't there. When I show you the data, you'll see that most of the data involves increasing sleep by 30 minutes or time in bed by 30 minutes. They don't factor in circadian rhythm. Are you morning bird or night owl? They don't factor in training times, the type of training, travel schedules. What is optimal sleep for that given athlete? How do you compensate with more sleep in terms of more training? None of that stuff. And therefore, there's a lack of integration. How are different people on the treatment team for the athlete or the team going to communicate with one another if they don't know what each one is doing and what their roles are in terms of, for example, sleep? The nutritionist has a role in terms of sleep, in terms of certain smoothies or foods that can help an athlete be more alert especially across time zones, or help an athlete feel more sleepy after a night game. The PT has a role of educating the athlete in terms of quality sleep to reduce the risk of injury and also shorten the time of recovery and rehab so they're on the field quicker. The team doctor has a role to talk to them about how specific sleep optimization and personalized strategies can boost their testosterone levels. Each one has a role, and there's just no integration right now. There's inadequate research because the stakeholders don't feel that it's as important because they're unaware. There's too much of a generalization in the sleep world. So, for example, the sleep apnea screening questionnaire we use is called a stop bang questionnaire. Some of this criteria include someone having to be over the age of 50, having to be obese, a BMI in the obesity range, a neck of 16 inches thickness or more, have to have hypertension, have to be over 50 years of age. Really? Like, what athletes are that old or obese, unless you're talking about a sumo wrestler or something, but no. So there's a generalization, and people are trying to use screening tools or treatment tools for the general population for elite athletes. They're a different breed. It doesn't work that way. There's also a focus on sleep problem solving. Okay, we'll address it when someone has a really bad problem. Guess what? Athletes don't always talk about problems. They try and figure it out themselves. So if an athlete does tell you about a problem, it's usually a pretty serious one. There's lack of specificity, even within different sports. There's different sleep strategies that are more beneficial within different demographics, age ranges. The sleep protocols are designed for a 35-year-old linebacker playing in the NFL is very different from what I'd recommend to an 18-year-old female gymnast. And then, of course, with competing priorities in sport, the stakeholders aren't really focusing on sleep and performance, and so their resources are allocated elsewhere. That's one of the reasons I've also been working on pushing for establishing sleep guidelines for organizations. I was delighted to write the sleep guidelines for the Australian Football League a couple of years ago. Very well received. And once stakeholders and organizations are aware of how the travel schedules and their competition schedules can, frankly, directly lead to injuries of players and shorten their careers, let alone destroy their performance, they're more incentivized to do the right thing. How bad is the problem? Collegiate athletes say it's the number one thing that their athletic time commitments keep them from doing. 77% of collegiate athletes feel like they get less sleep. More than half of them say they could use more sleep. They need more sleep. Depending on the study for professional athletes, the rate of sleep problems, again, not suboptimal sleep, the rate of sleep problems between 13 to 70% of professional athletes. It is a true pandemic. The money is there in sport. We know that soccer in Europe alone has a market size of around 25 billion US dollars. Cricket has a market size of 2 billion US dollars. Basketball, an NBA team on average, just a team on average, has a valuation of over $2 billion. Hockey, the NHL league revenues were over 4 billion US. Tennis, US tennis alone is valued at close to 6 billion. Volleyball, I never knew volleyball was so lucrative or had such a big following. That's amazing. And baseball, MLB, the Major League Baseball in the US alone, generates more than 10 billion each year. Golf, it's an $84 billion industry, and Formula One racing is 8 billion. So what resources are allocated to quality sleep and research? That's where we come in. What's the direct impact of sleep problems on sports performance? Well, when we think about head injuries, it's bidirectional. If you're sleep deprived, your reaction times drop. You're more likely to be injured, have a head injury, because you don't see someone coming at you, going to tackle you out of the corner of your eye. You're slower to react. If you've had a head injury, even with one head injury, around 50% of those people have insomnia, other sleep disruptions. Sleep apnea rates increase dramatically, up to 36% of people with traumatic brain injuries. And obstructive sleep apnea, central sleep apnea. In terms of general performance, this is pulled from different studies. Again, we're looking just restricting athletes to maybe 4 hours of sleep or 6 hours of sleep. or getting them 30 minutes more of sleep, not the personalized integrative algorithms that I've designed. Cycling, 1 night of partial sleep loss resulted in a drop in peak power output, less motivation to train, decreased maximum jump velocity. Joint coordination variability means you're not doing the technique the right way, which means it increases your risk of injury. That's Sophia Vitas, one of my close friends and a member of US Rowing. Total sleep time drops, and it causes you to perceive the training load to be higher the following day. It'll also lead to more inflammation, more risk of injury. So your progress is going to be slowed, and you're going to have increased risk of injury and then longer rehabilitation times as well if you're injured. Sleep deprivation, a single all-nighter can reduce your reaction times by 300%. Why is Bruce Lee here? Because he was the fastest person I've heard of. He actually apparently practiced catching rice grains with chopsticks for speed and reaction times. He was famous for grabbing a coin from someone's hand while they were in front of him, and they wouldn't even see his hand move. When he was in the Green Hornet, they had to slow down the frames. They had to tell him to slow down because the frames couldn't capture his movements. So they've done studies. I think there was a UK study that showed that 2 drinks of alcohol was equivalent to losing an hour of sleep. Around 4 drinks was equivalent to being sleep deprived 2 or 3 hours, so on and so forth, which means drunk driving accidents, you're going to perform as if you were drunk if you're sleep deprived. Tennis players who are sleep deprived see a serving accuracy drop of 31%. As we know in sport, even 1% is major. 1/100th of a second was the difference between the Olympic runners a few years ago, the female runners for the 100-meter dash, between getting on the gold medal podium or not even getting in the top 3. The difference between the gold medalist and the person in 4th was 1/100th of a second. Mental errors. Why mental errors a problem with sleep deprivation? Because the same images we see on elite athletes' brain scans at the Amen clinics, where you look at blood flow and activity, SPECT imaging being one of the most sensitive tools for detecting head injuries. We've seen that the same patterns we see in those NFL guys, MMA players, boxers, are the same patterns we see in sleep problems, quantity, quality, or duration, as I mentioned. And therefore, what do those areas of the brain do? The frontal lobes and temporal lobes. The frontal lobes help us with attention, concentration, executive functioning, task organization, planning, multitasking, motivation, drive, interest, joy, pleasure, dopamine. And the temporal lobes help us with mental resilience, emotional stability, new learnings, language, word finding, names and faces. So your mental game is just not going to be there if you are sleep deprived. Shortened playing careers. 72% of sleepy Major League Baseball players are no longer playing in the leagues within 2 years. Injury rates. Sleep hours are the strongest predictor of injuries, even more so than hours of practice. Team dynamics. How are you going to get along with the team, figure out your game plays, figure out your strengths and weaknesses and plays in the opposition's team, defense and offense. How are you going to remember all these things when your brain isn't working right, when you're feeling like you're foggy or jet lagged? It's not going to happen. And team dynamics will suffer. Imagine when you're jet lagged, you're going to be irritable, frustrated, short fuse, snappy. It's going to make you go from flow state to angry, bitter, cynical, exhausted state. Sleep deprivation drops your basketball shooting accuracy by more than 9%. And tennis, serving speeds can drop by around 40%. That's insane. Coach Spo is amazing. He's a great guy. And that's me at one of the Heat games. He was so kind to invite me for a game over there. Great guy, great team. Sleep deprivation has been shown to affect soccer majorly. Yeah, we spoke about the cognitive impact, peak power output, motivation, but you're running miles on the field when you're a soccer player. Cycling, there are individual studies across sport that show that One night of partial sleep loss impairs recovery from HIIT training, peak power output, feel sleepy, less motivated to train. See, these things keep coming up. Gymnastics, inferior performance, increased training load. You might perceive it to be heavier than it actually is or more difficult than it actually is. Attention, isometric strength. Across the board, sleep problems affect performance. And with the smallest of margins in elite sport, numbers of 9% for basketball shooting accuracy, 40% for tennis serving accuracy, 31% for tennis serving speeds. These things need to change, and they needed to change years ago. Accuracy. Darts, as you know, Phil Taylor is considered the greatest ever in darts and volleyball. Across the board, you will suffer with suboptimal sleep. I'm not even talking about treating a sleep problem for an athlete. We're talking about using sleep as a performance enhancing tool. Mental resilience, positively associated with good sleep quality, while worry, perceived stress was associated with poor sleep. Nadal is famous for his mental resilience and fortitude. As Sam Ramson said, we're teaching our players sleep is a weapon. Reaction times, motor function, motivation, focus, strength, stress regulation, muscle recovery, sprint performance, metabolic rate, memory and learning, injury rates, illness rates, all of those are affected by sleep. What about sleep and mental health problems? As I said, I'm a psychiatrist and a sleep medicine doctor, and there's a huge overlap. If you're anxious, you're in danger mode, you're not going to be able to sleep properly. At the same time, if you get less sleep, your stress hormone levels, cortisol, go up in the morning, you'll have more inflammation. Your gray matter volumes in the rational brain and the temporals, which regulate your emotions, are not going to work properly. In other words, fueling more anxiety and worse sleep. If you have ADHD, your brain may be bouncing around, you may be withdrawing from the Adderall from the morning, and so it'll be difficult for you to fall asleep. But if you're sleep deprived, you might have all the symptoms of ADHD, and a lot of kids, unfortunately, are being misdiagnosed with ADHD when they in fact have sleep apnea or allergies and their adenoids are obstructing their airway. If you're depressed, you'll be less motivated. You'll tend to want to be in bed longer. It's going to disrupt your circadian rhythm that's influenced by light and darkness and consistency of your schedules. And if you're lying in bed, you'll feel less motivated and you'll have negative thoughts creep in. It'll worsen it. Jerusalem syndrome is a very interesting condition. One night of sleep deprivation can result in pilgrims to the Holy Land becoming psychotic, thinking that they're Jesus and getting off the plane barefoot. Yep, it's called Jerusalem syndrome. The Israeli authorities know about this condition. They send them on the next plane back to the US or wherever they came from. And because they're sleep deprived, they get enough sleep. And they wake up not psychotic, but wondering what happened to their trip. It's called Jerusalem syndrome. PTSD symptoms, danger mode, fight or flight mode, nightmares, flashbacks will keep you up at night. Also, people who have nightmares will want to avoid sleep as much as possible. But avoiding sleep actually makes your brain need to catch up on dream sleep first. Sleep avoidance actually fuels your nightmares. Substance use. We know that substance use is going to be a big problem because depending on the kind of substance, your sleep is going to be affected. Benzodiazepines worsen sleep apnea. Opiates worsen central sleep apnea. Marijuana slows the brain down, makes you less motivated. You might lie in bed, it might disrupt your sleep rhythms. Stimulants will cause insomnia. A lot of psychotropic medications that we as sports psychiatrists practice prescribing patients can have a bad impact on their sleep. Over-the-counter sleep medications can worsen restless leg syndrome. Most of the SSRIs, the antidepressants we prescribe, can worsen restless leg syndrome or tooth grinding, bruxism. A lot of the antipsychotic meds can cause weight gain and worsen sleep apnea. These things need to be known and addressed. 90% of people with depression complain about sleep quality. And when I was doing my training in psychiatry over a decade ago, I remember being overnight in the ER, evaluating patients and determining whether they can go home or whether they need to be admitted to the hospital on a psychiatric hold. One of those risk factors, warning signs, red flags on my list, on my checklist, was poor sleep in the preceding 48 hours. Not even total sleep deprivation, but just poor sleep, inadequate sleep. What about the impact of sleep loss on general health? Why is that even important for us? I'll tell you. So when we think about general health, think about hormones, we know that testosterone is extremely essential for both men and women. Testosterone essentially is the hormone of vitality. Healthy young men in their 30s who are allowed only 6 hours or less of sleep within a week develop a drop in the testosterone levels that's equivalent to someone 10 years older than them. So it essentially ages you by over a decade. So if you're a 25-year-old athlete listening to this thinking, I get enough sleep because you're getting 7 hours of sleep, but maybe your optimal sleep is 9 hours. Each week you're losing out on 14 hours of sleep. You're essentially performing the same way a 35-year-old would in your sport. Why would you want to shorten your playing career like that? This is my health data. As you can see in the top right corner, on the 25th of June, 2021, I got my testosterone levels, 569. And I wasn't happy. It was mid-range, but I was also very busy the preceding couple of months, traveling all over, working very hard. So I had not really focused on my sleep. I was a hypocrite. And then I said, okay, let me just focus on my sleep strategies. Let me see what I can do. And then around 6 weeks later, on the 8th of September, I got my testosterone levels done again. 827, almost 300 points. No testosterone supplementation, no injections, no fancy supplements, just allowing myself optimal sleep, timings, that's regularity, and quality. We know that poor sleep is linked to inflammation. In fact, if you're sleep deprived, you're twice as likely to relapse if you have Crohn's disease. Just as we have annual checkups for people's hearts and colon and blood work, I think we need to have annual screening tools for sleep deprivation or sleep problems. Kids can have stunted growth if they have poor sleep. Kids need way more sleep than adults. And growth hormone is only released in your deep sleep, which is in the first half of the night. So if you're going to bed too late, you're not going to get enough growth hormone. That's why, back in the old days, they were right. They wanted kids to go to sleep early. Maybe they knew something we only found out many decades later. 89% and 55% of sleep-deprived children and adults go on to develop obesity. Short sleep duration is one of the strongest risk factors for obesity. For every 4 hours of sleep deprivation you experience, your brain thinks it needs 900 more calories. Now you may think, I don't lose out on 4 hours of sleep. Well, if you're getting 7 hours of sleep a night and your brain needs 9 hours, each week you're losing out on 14 hours of sleep. You're sleep deprived. Why is obesity happening with sleep loss? Well, I don't want to go too much into the weeds and the biochemistry of this. The hormones are the gateways of the cells. With poor sleep, less testosterone, less growth hormone, so less conversion to muscle, and muscle is a metabolic organ. More ghrelin is released in people who are sleep deprived, and that makes you hungrier, that hormone. Less leptin, which satiates you, makes you feel full. The frontal lobes are less active, which makes you more impulsive, go to sugars and carbs. And you'll be more likely to stress eat because your mood regulation center is not working very well. All these mechanisms play a role when it comes to obesity. Heart disease. When you lose out on 1 hour of sleep in the springtime with daylight savings time, the next day there's a 24% increase in heart attacks. 24%. And in the fall, when you get an hour of extra sleep, there's a 21% reduction in heart attacks. There's so many athletes falling dead on the field today for whatever reason you want to go with. The fact is, we can save lives through sleep. Type 2 diabetes risk. They've looked at healthy young men, 6 hours of sleep per night. Within a week, they had symptoms of pre-diabetes. Young guys. And then when they were allowed more sleep, those symptoms resolved. Negatively impacts emotions and social interactions. You're going to be finding it really hard to pick up on social cues. You won't know when your spouse is annoyed at you as well as you would. And then you wouldn't respond in an appropriate way if you're sleep deprived. You'd be more likely to react than respond. Learning and memory. So they looked at medical interns, those who had 16-hour shifts, 33% more medical errors, over 400% increased risk of jabbing themselves with a needle. Medical errors lead to death. People are dying. I remember when I was doing my training in psychiatry at the grand rounds, where all departments come together, a big auditorium, an important topic is presented. A topic was presented on sleep loss in medical training, because back in the day, it was at least 100, 120 hours a week in the hospital. And they would capped it off at 80 hours a week. And they say we shouldn't be having a more than 26-hour shift. And they found that people are dying because of sleep-deprived doctors. And the intern, the lady who was speaking at the grand rounds and was giving us the numbers, one of the top brain surgeons stands up and says in the auditorium, "You're wrong, I'm right, your data is wrong, brain surgeons don't need sleep," and walked out. Even in the highest positions of academia, optimal sleep is ignored with devastating consequences. 3 Mile disaster, Chernobyl, the Columbia disaster, all linked to sleep-deprived people engaged in various steps of safety. If you're sleep-deprived, you're not going to be able to retain any information. It's like your memory inbox is full or waterlogged. Matthew Walker did a good study on this, and he's famous for his TED Talk. They divided people into 2 groups, one a sleep-deprived group and a normal group with sleep. They looked at an MRI scanner, and they looked at how quickly they were learning information. There's a 40% drop in the ability of the brain to make new memories without sleep. 40% drop is the difference between getting an A and failing. So you want to be loaded up on sleep before an exam. If you to choose between learning the last chapter in a book or just getting the sleep that you need, choose the sleep, because if you don't, you'll forget the last chapter in the book and everything else you also studied. The glymphatic system is a drainage system for the brain that was discovered just a few years ago. It's a drainage system that opens up only in your deep sleep, and it flushes out toxins that build up in the brain during the day, such as beta amyloid that's associated with Alzheimer's disease. This drainage system also works to infuse the brain and coat the brain with nutrients, amino acids, ketones. If it's not working properly, or you're sleep deprived, it's going to be blocked up, increased risk of dementia. There's direct correlations between lymphatic damage, poor quality sleep, sleep apnea, inadequate sleep, and dementia risk. Dementia costs the US alone $360 billion a year. A study published last month showed that 15% of those cases could be prevented with basic, not even personalized, basic sleep strategies. 15% of 360 billion is $54 billion of potential savings in healthcare costs each year with basic sleep education. If you think about it, sleep problems are a direct but also modifiable risk factor of the 10 most common causes of death and disability in the world. Road traffic accidents, heart attacks, strokes, dementia, cancers, obesity, diabetes, cholesterol problems, all directly related to poor sleep. If you had 4 hours of sleep a particular night, the next day, the natural killer cells, which are the first line of defense for viruses like COVID and tumors, cancers, their functioning the next day drops by 70%. The WHO has said that shift work is a probable cancer-causing risk factor with direct relations to prostate, breast, and colon cancer. We know that the shorter you sleep, the shorter your life. Now, some may say, well, I only need 6 hours of sleep. Well, you may need 6 hours of sleep, but your optimal sleep may be more. 1% of the population are what we call short sleepers, who genetically, the genetics work in such a way that they only literally need 4 to 6 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. Maybe 1% of them. So clearly not a significant amount of people. We know that those who are sleep deprived, the end caps of the DNA, called the telomeres, go on shortening, even with sleep apnea, which means that their genetics are aging at the biological, at the cellular level, the nuclear level. You are aging your brain every night that you're not getting quality sleep. Not only that, with sleep deprivation, around 711 genes are influenced. Around over 300 of those are downregulated or suppressed, which are responsible for immune functioning. And over 300 of those are upregulated or activated, turned on, that result in tumors, inflammation, heart attacks, and strokes. But what do we do about it? We spoke about the prevalence of sleep problems in athletes in sport. We spoke about the direct impact of sleep problems on performance, the indirect impact of sleep problems on performance and quality of life, hormones, inflammation, and the like. And now we think about what to do about it. This is my pyramid of peak sleep performance that I stole from my book, Peak Sleep Performance. This is my approach to sleep in athletes and teams. Sleep optimization. You can't optimize without normalizing if there's a problem. Start at the base, level 1, where I identify every single factor that may be sabotaging someone's sleep. It might be a sleep disorder, like insomnia. It may not be a sleep disorder, because insomnia could be a symptom of many other contributing factors. Low iron levels can lead to insomnia. Digestive issues can lead to insomnia. Low vitamin D can lead to insomnia. Hormonal imbalances can lead to insomnia. It's about a ground-up approach. Insomnia is a symptom. Treating the insomnia with simply Ambien, it would be akin to treating a fever with Tylenol. Sure, if it's a flu, but what if the fever is an inflammation of the brain like encephalitis or septicemia? The person's going to possibly die because you just treated that symptom without looking at the underlying factors. Level 1 is everything that sabotages sleep problems, also all the contributing factors that affect sleep. Level 2 is how do we track sleep metrics. There's a bunch of wearables, not very accurate for determining the difference between deep and dream sleep. As general measures of total sleep, they're okay. Not a fan of those wearables. There's also other ways to measure sleep diaries. And what else are we measuring besides sleep? Are we measuring how you're functioning through the day, how alert you're feeling, your psychomotor vigilance test, how your reaction times are, your sports performance, your depression rating scales and anxiety rating scales? We need to look at a variety of things when it comes to tracking your sleep and everything associated with your sleep. Level 3 is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia strategies, which are the gold standard treatment strategies, the most evidence-based strategies to realign your sleep rhythms and improve your insomnia. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, looking at thought strategies, faulty thought patterns, unhealthy behaviors, lifestyle problems, and your sleep and bedroom environment. Because your bedroom is supposed to be your cave. It's not supposed to have flat screen TVs or iPads or tablets. Level 4 is, okay, a good base has been built. How do we optimize? Travel strategies, timing of travel, your circadian rhythm, strategic napping, sleep extension, light exposure, light blocking, supplements, doses, timing, duration, quality of supplements, training type, your chronotype. That's where science becomes an art. At the individual athlete level, but also the team and organizational level. Pain affects sleep, hormonal imbalances also affect sleep, mental health disorders affect your sleep. Sleep disorders by themselves may be insomnias or sleep breathing disorders like sleep apnea or narcolepsy, what we call hypersomnolence, excessive sleepiness. Morning birds or night owls, what we call circadian disorders. Parasomnias are sleepwalking, sleep talking, sexsomnias, and movement disorders may be acting out your dreams, sleep seizures, restless leg syndrome as well. But there's numerous, hundreds of factors contributing to each of these things. My approach is marginal gains, the way athletes approach their sport. If we mitigate the impact of 10 different factors on your quality of sleep, and each factor maybe contributes 5%, if we just do one factor, a 5% improvement is not going to be noticed by you. But if we do all 10, a 50% improvement is surely going to be noticed by you, and it'll reflect in your performance. Pain. Pain can directly impact your sleep. You're not going to be able to get quality sleep. You'll have more fragmented sleep, more shallow sleep, less restorative or refreshing sleep. But then with less sleep, you'll have more inflammation. And pain can also be from, then you'll be on medication. Certain medication can worsen your sleep. Certain pain meds like opiates can increase the risk of central sleep apnea. Stress hormones released with pain can result in less healing, less testosterone levels with chronic pain. But sleep problems can also cause you to perceive pain to be much more than it actually is. So what's that going to say for your rehabilitation protocols and return to play? They're going to have to be stretched out. Pun unintended. All right, so I mentioned what we do and how we track. And the athlete sleep screening questionnaire and the ASBQ are great tools for athlete-specific sleep screening strategies. We can also track brain waves, brain scans at AIM clinics, performance measures, and look at and track and see how they improve. Sedating medications are dangerous. That's why the FDA has black box warnings on them. Ambien, trazodone, Lunesta, Belsomra. Most of the time with my patients, I'm taking them off sleep medications, unless they have serious issues that need medication like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and things like that. But why don't we do a due diligence? For restless leg syndrome, the most common factor tends to be low iron stores. So why not just get an iron level, a ferritin level, see if there's a deficiency and supplement? It could be that simple. The sleep medications are like putting a Band-Aid on a festering wound for the most part. They stop working quickly. They may have an opposite effect and keep you up within even 72 hours. A lot of the over-the-counter medications block histamine, but they also block acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter for memory. So with long-term use, there's a risk of potential dementia down the line. Heavy doses of melatonin are done all wrong. Medications like Benadryl can result in daytime fatigue or sleepiness. And Benadryl, SSRIs worsen restless leg syndrome. A lot of sleep meds can be addictive as well, like Xanax and Klonopin, are not supposed to be used for the long term. And the elderly especially can have falls, infections, heart attacks with certain medications. I like sleep supplements, but again, one size does not fit all. And it's really about choosing the right supplement, the right dosing, the right timing for the right person, and the good quality. Melatonin should never be given in a dose of over 3 milligrams unless someone is acting out their dreams, called REM behavior disorder. That's the only time I'll do melatonin above 3 milligrams. Melatonin is taken all wrong. There's lots of horrible supplements out there. There was a study done on 10 brands of melatonin claiming 3 milligrams in each bottle. When they did the study, they found the actual quantity of melatonin varied from 0 milligrams to 30 milligrams, which is crazy to think. 5-HTP is necessary to make serotonin in the brain. It's calming. GABA is a calming neurotransmitter. L-theanine is calming. B6 is needed to make serotonin. Passion flower calms the nervous system down. So does lemon balm. Valerian root is especially helpful for middle insomnia and also women who've hit menopause. Magnesium improves deep sleep or non-REM sleep to help with the drainage channels for the brain. Chamomile tea in the right doses is effective as well. I also really like ashwagandha. It's one of my favorites. Inositol, glycine are good ones too. How can we promote alertness? Caffeine, only strategically, not regularly. Light exposure, timing, intensity of lighting for certain amounts of time. There's all these calculations that I do depending on the individual athlete and their times. Strategic napping, so fixed timings of naps, fixed kind of criteria to get into a calming, relaxed state to calm the nervous system down, or sleep extension before traveling and you know you're not going to sleep on the plane. Circadian rhythm. So our sleep rhythms are determined by our circadian rhythm, light and dark, melatonin and stress hormone cortisol, and your homeostatic rhythms are your sleep need. When you've woken up in the morning, you've just been drinking on a lot of sleep, so you're not exactly sleep deprived if you've slept okay. But as you go through the day, like say you wake up at 7 a.m., by 7 p.m. without any sleep, you're kind of running out of your sleep reserve. So you need to bank on sleep some more. And hopefully by the time your sleepiness kicks in, it's dark and your melatonin levels rise, and then it creates a beautiful symphony of sleep and wakefulness. In the deep sleep between midnight and 2 a.m. is where your growth hormone is released. 4 to 6 a.m. is where stress hormone cortisol is released, and hopefully your melatonin levels are coming down. Around 8 a.m. is where your peak testosterone levels are. And as you can see, depending on this, we can shift your rhythms to be a morning bird or a night owl, or to deal with minimizing jet lag when you're crossing multiple time zones. And now back for circadian rhythms on performance. Well, if you're a morning bird, your peak power output, your peak performance can be 5.5 hours after you wake up. So if you're woken up at 6 in the morning, your peak performance is going to be around 11 a.m. But if you're a night owl and you woke up at 10 a.m., your peak performance is going to be around 9 p.m. So when my basketball players have night games and third quarter, coaches think about which of two guys to put on the court of equal talent, coach knows that he's going to have to put the guy on who's more for night owl for the night game because he can perform better. 26% is the difference in performance variations for night owls and morning birds and time of day. And they've looked at all these measures: oxygen uptake, spinal cord excitability, reaction times, race times, training load, strength. Even time zones within the US, East Coast and West Coast, when West Coast teams played evening games against the East Coast teams, they beat them twice as often. Why? because it was late for the East Coast teams, but early in the evening for the West Coast teams. NBA teams to travel eastward score more points per game and have a winning percentage. We've seen this in football and hockey in the US as well. We can shift your rhythms. I can shift your rhythms. I don't suffer from jet lag anymore. I consider it my superpower. And I do this for my elite athletes and teams who want to work with me on these things. You might call me a chrono coach. With all these things happening in sport, what's within our control? The athlete's health conditions, sleep disorders, medication, supplements, lifestyle choices, morning bird or night owl. Yes, that's within our control. I can change that. The sleep need as a recovery tool, as a strategic performance enhancing tool. Your sleep schedules, travel, training times, competition times. Competition times may not be that flexible or adjustable until we get to organizations and create those guidelines that the stakeholders will take into consideration when planning out schedules. The organizational factors, yeah, if the coach, athletic directors, trainers, managers let me know beforehand, I can tell them what kinds of flights to take, what timings, and how to adjust the training times to be at their peak performance as soon as they set foot in the new destination. There's a proprietary calculation I use. With strategic napping, that's allowing yourself 20 to 30 minutes of more sleep at a fixed time, either before a game or after a game, or to account for some travel mishaps. Jump velocity, subjective performance, alertness, cognitive functioning, power output, improved recovery, less pain are all seen. Casey Smith, the Dallas Mavericks, said, if you told an athlete you had a treatment that would reduce the chemicals associated with stress, would naturally increase human growth hormone, enhance recovery rate, improve performance, all of them would do it. Sleep does all of those things. I think that's the Goldberg rule, where this researcher asked Olympic athletes if they would take a drug to give them a gold medal that could never be detected. All of them said they would take that drug if it could never be detected. He said, what if that drug could never be detected? You'd win the gold medal, but you would die within 5 years. Over half of them said that they would do that. You don't need to die or be caught or banned from your sport when you can utilize powerful, personalized, individualized sleep optimization strategies. The kind of stuff that's bread and butter for me now. Individual studies have only looked at extending sleep by around 30% or 30 minutes more in bed, not even accounting for the proprietary algorithms that I work with teams and athletes on. And they found even 3 nights of 30 minutes more sleep for triathletes improves endurance performance. Various sports, swimming, soccer, basketball, tennis, the numbers are there. This was me at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca. They were so kind to invite me to speak about sleep and performance. And one of the stakeholders told me, Shane, this is great, but you're 2 years ahead of us. I didn't like that. I wanted us, especially, I love the Nadal Academy. I've been a big fan of Rafa. Since he was 16 years old, I started watching him. We can change this. We can change the conversation. We can really, truly implement sleep as the last frontier in peak performance. Well-rested tennis players have a 4.2% increase in hitting accuracy. Basketball players improved accuracy by 9.2%. Well-rested swimmers show 17% improvements in starting times. Think about Michael Phelps and Miller Radkavich. 1/100th of a second was the difference. It's incredible what we can do with quality sleep strategies. Sport is broken because there might be people who've watched a PowerPoint online or done a little online training course or certification or read an article on sleep coaching and call themselves sleep coaches, and they have some in with a team or an athlete and say, well, we know what to do. That's dangerous and that's wrong. It's like the Wild West. A lot of the famous sleep names in the world are psychologists or sleep researchers, PhDs, not clinicians, not doctors to know the impact of sleep problems on overall health systems, what medications do to adversely affect your sleep or your mental health or vice versa, or your performance. They don't do therapeutic use exemptions for athletes or treat them for substance abuse disorders or bipolar disorders, schizophrenia, or the gut health, like the microbiome or hormonal imbalances or inflammation. So I did 16 years of training after high school just to be able to build a skill set to help as many people as possible. And the time is now. With quality sleep, quicker recovery from injury, quicker return to play, less inflammation, less stress hormones, which delay healing, more testosterone, more growth hormone, quicker healing. This was me at the Miami Heat Stadium a few years ago. No, actually last year, November. I'll give you just a few examples of what these personalized sleep strategies can do. I said sleep trackers are notoriously unreliable for knowing the difference between deep and dream sleep. Yes, I agree. Horribly unreliable. But if we're looking at total sleep time and tracking that, or sleep efficiency, how efficient are you at sleeping? So if you're in bed for 10 hours and only getting 5 hours of sleep, that's 50% efficiency. But if you're in bed for 8 hours, getting 7.5 hours of sleep, that's over 90% efficiency. That's important. I don't care about total sleep, but also timing of sleep, quality of sleep, how refreshed you are when you wake up, and how refreshed you feel at different points throughout the day, and how your performance cognitively, emotionally, and physically add up to the sleep improvements you're experiencing. This is Aura Ring data from one of my professional tennis players, world famous, won several Grand Slams and Olympic gold medals as well. Contacted me, looked at some numbers before we intervened. February 1st, February 2nd, February 4th, he was in bed 8 hours, 45 minutes. Sorry, he was getting 8 hours, 45 minutes of sleep, in bed for almost 11.5 hours. In the middle, February 2nd, got 7 hours, 46 minutes of sleep, was in bed 2 hours more. 7:46 minutes of sleep, total time in bed, 9 hours. February 5th, 6th, what are these numbers looking at? 7 hours of sleep, 10 hours in bed. 7 hours of sleep, 9.5 hours in bed. It was terrible. And red zone, restfulness was poor, sleep efficiency was bad. 8 hours of sleep, great, but over 10 hours in bed. He was feeling terrible on waking up. So all those things matter, not just how much sleep you got. If you're feeling terrible in the morning, it is not normal. I told him, look, you've been dealing with sleep problems for decades, your entire life. Your brain needs time to relearn how to sleep efficiently. So I told him to give it a couple of months. He called me in a couple of days and said, my sleep issues are resolved. I said, no, you were supposed to contact me in 2 months. These things take time. We're following trends over time, not night-to-night variability. But he was too excited. As you can see, on that day, 5 hours, 15 minutes of sleep, but he was in bed only 5 hours and 30 minutes. And he said, Doc, I'm feeling better than I've felt in years with just 5 hours, 15 minutes. Why? Because good quality sleep. Ignore the REM sleep reading. They're in the red because those devices aren't very accurate at determining the difference between dream and light sleep. Next day, 7.5 hours of sleep, but in bed just over 8 hours. Great sleep efficiency of over 90% up here up top. Sleep efficiency 87%. Got 6 hours, 18 minutes of sleep, but 7 hours. The trends were improving. What about your 90% efficiency? 90% efficiency. Getting close to the 7.5 hours of optimal sleep with 8 hours. Some of my athletes need 10 and a half or 12 hours of sleep, depending on the intensity of their training and their competition, by the way. What's the gap analysis right now in sleep? There's no specific training courses for athletes, coaches, people who treat the athletes and teams. There's no data-driven sleep guidelines. I'm writing those. There's very few personalized sleep screening tools for athletes. It's usually focused on sleep problems, not sleep optimization. Virtually nobody looks at all the numbers of integrative underlying factors contributing to the sleep problem. And it's only addressed when there's an issue. There's not enough research out there as well. There's just research on 30 minutes more sleep or a nap. There's a great need for education and integration awareness. I work with individual athletes. I work with teams. I work in season, pre-season, off-season. I work on sleep problems and sleep optimization. I work on travel schedules to minimize jet lag as well. I do guidelines, I do talks, I do workshops for teams, and I'm a consultant for certain teams and athletes on an ongoing level as well. Because that involves team meetings, integration with different members of the treatment team, and understanding the role of different people involved in the treatment of the team and the athletes. Everyone from the coaches, the trainers, the PTs, the athletic directors, the psychologists, the data analytics people. That's Kyle Korver. He's a great guy, and Dr. Daniel Lehman, who I work with as well. Another great guy who really put the whole concussion issue front and center for the NFL. This is what I do with my athletes and my teams. I'm the sleep medicine doctor, educate them, understand collaboration, understand each of their roles, and also look at different treatments that are being given by the nutritionist or the PT or the team doctor or the sports psychiatrist, and figure out which ones may be adversely affecting their sleep and performance. The sports psychiatrist, I'm a sports psychiatrist, needs to know the best psychiatric meds that will not affect performance or sleep. The team doctor needs to know how to screen athletes for sleep problems or suboptimal sleep and coordinate with the rest of the staff. The nutritionist needs to know about meals, smoothies to enhance sleep or recovery. Coaches, trainers need to educate their athletes. You guys at the first line. PTs need to talk to their athletes about sleep, especially after injury or preventing injury or during rehab. Athletic directors need to coordinate not just in season, but pre-season, off-season as well. Discuss means, timing, duration, transportation, logistics, bedding. Sports psychologists need to reinforce sleep education with an emphasis on the association with mental resilience and learning those coping strategies in the moment. And then we can crunch the numbers, and the proof is in the pudding. When my athletes see the numbers on their performance measures, their sleep measures, the quality of life measures, the testosterone levels, there's no going back. There's only going forward. So at the International Society of Sports Psychiatry, I'm the chairman and founder of the Sleep Performance Committee. What we're doing is we're going to be working on guidelines for certain organizations and athletes and teams. I do work with individual athletes and teams as a consultant, as a performance coach, as a sleep guru, as they like to call me. And we're also launching pilot projects for certain professional teams and athletes for free, where they work with me through the International Society for Sports Psychiatry, do a little sleep optimization protocol for several weeks, and then the team can track the numbers, track their alertness, track their cognitive functioning, track their reaction times, track their performance measures, and see for yourselves how performance and those numbers improve, along with the sleep numbers. Very low risk, potentially extremely high benefit. We're doing that for free just to prove that the numbers are there when you incorporate specific protocols that I work with my athletes on. We're also going to be building a digital form factor, like an app. So it'll be much easier for athletes and teams to work on that. If there's anyone listening today that would like to collaborate with me and the project or reach out for any other reason, there's different ways to do so. I'll come to that. Our mission is carry the torch forward, awareness, lobby stakeholders, network, collaborate. Sleep optimization is the last frontier in peak performance. Everyone will win. Longer playing careers, world records being broken, less injuries, longer playing careers, and overall quality of life and health. You can reach me on WhatsApp, through my website, through my Instagram, Peak Sleep Performance, or the YouTube channel. And my book has a lot of helpful information that's practical and applicable right now. I'm encouraged to take the torch forward with any of you who might want to collaborate with us in the future. Feel free to reach out to me and we'll explore where we go from there. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you for being part of the sleep revolution in sport.